Everyone, welcome. My name is Kyle. I just want to say, thank you for joining in today. I used to do these actually every Tuesday, and it's been quite a while, so I hope that I see some familiar faces here. I'm here to just answer your guys' questions as someone who has OCD, and I do struggle with and have struggled with a few different themes myself. And now I've been kind of managing in my everyday life for like about a year and a half now. And so, at NOCD, I do work full time as a peer advisor. So if you're not familiar with what that is, I get matched with you in therapy when you join, just like you get matched with your therapist. So you get matched with an OCD specialist as well as a peer advisor who is someone who kind of walks alongside you, more so in the beginning to make sure that you feel comfortable and kind of get an idea of what you're going into. I know when I started therapy that I was very new to ERP and I didn't really know too much about it. So we're here to really just kind of like help out in that way and come alongside you as a peer versus a licensed clinician. So that's the thing. I'm not a licensed clinician myself. Just here, someone with OCD. So thank you for joining. I'm going to start in on some comments here. So we do already have a few. So let's see here. Hi, Andrea. Thank you so much for joining. Hi, Cassie. Hello, Cassie. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, so yeah, hi, everyone. Hi, Rebecca. Thank you guys for joining. So I'm going to start on a question. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so how do you tell the difference between actual desires and intrusive thoughts? So that's a really good question. That is, I think, one of the biggest things when it comes to OCD is that distinction there, because it's confusing and it's nerve-wracking to not quite know. So how I would explain this is, so actual desires. So that is called ego dystonic. So that means that your true self does not feel aligned with the thoughts that you experience. And so that is where anxiety comes from, the distress, and then that's where the compulsions come into play. So that is called ego dystonic. Now, ego systonic is when those are actual desires. And so the thought of it doesn't really give anxiety. It's something that you want, something that, it feels much different than ego dystonic with intrusive thoughts, because those are things that cause a lot of anxiety, and then compulsions come out of that as well. So if you're not familiar with those two terms, I would definitely look into that, but that's really what describes this difference right here. Thank you for the question. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so pro artistry. Is missing work from high anxiety and mood swings an avoidance compulsion or justified? Well, I guess this would be more of an opinion question. I think there can be two different sides of it, because it really depends on what's happening. Because if you are very anxious at work or in school or something, and you can't really handle that because of the high anxiety, I don't know if I would consider that avoidance, because to me, maybe I would stay at work because I want to avoid the thoughts. And so maybe work distracts me or whatnot. Now, I know when I was going through the worst of my OCD, I actually was taking a few classes. These classes I was taking, I failed two of them actually, because I was so anxious and so in the OCD that I just couldn't handle it. And I tried really hard, and I wanted it to be something that I guess you could say distracted me, but nothing really could take away those thoughts at the time. And I know a lot of people sometimes have to, take time off of work to really focus on their mental health. So in my opinion, that is justified because you're putting your mental health first. The way it kind of worked out for me was when I was at my worst. There was many months that I was at my worst peak of OCD. And then actually when it really, really skyrocketed, and I was having panic attacks every single day, I actually was essentially laid off at the time. I didn't work for NOCD at this time because this was the beginning of the pandemic. So I was kind of like let go from work. And so I was actually just sitting in my house by myself all the time, anxiety ridden, and spending all these times on my intrusive thoughts, on the compulsions. And I didn't really like that because I was just stuck in that. So that was actually really hard. But if you have to miss work because you're focusing on your mental health, then I think that, that is a good thing if that's something that you can do. Okay. Hello, everyone. Oh, sorry, I just jumped around. Okay, Jason. Okay. Hi, Jason. So any tips on somatic OCD? So if anyone isn't familiar, so somatic OCD deals a lot with focusing on like bodily functions. So it can really, it can go across many different things. So like breathing, blinking, really any like pains that can focus on. So I've actually had it a little bit with blinking before, which was pretty scary actually, because it's almost like, I was kind of questioning, like, am I blinking correctly? Am I blinking too fast? And then you're hyper focusing on your blinking, and it becomes, of course you could see how distressing that is. But tips on somatic. So this, it's hard because, I think what comes into play here is really ERP techniques. And I'm not sure, Jason, if you've been in therapy before, so I'd love to hear if you have any experience with ERP, because then I might have a few other questions. Now, if not, I would say definitely look into exposure therapy, whether that's with us or with someone else, but exposure therapy is the best way to overcome. And essentially what that is doing, that is really confronting the fear by doing exposures and then resisting compulsions. And compulsions can be very mental. I know all of mine are. So, just like rumination, like thinking about it all the time. And I know with my blinking, I just was thinking about it, like, is this normal? Is this okay? Like, and you kind of go off on that spiral. But something that, I don't want to sound like, very vague, but mindfulness techniques, something that I like to do if I'm feeling caught up in focus on something, and especially if it's something like bodily, that I want to kind of get away from that, not necessarily to distract, but to bring myself back to the present moment versus this one specific thing happening to me. So I like to kind of like pick things around me and, be like, okay, it's kind of silly, but like, okay, this cup right here is blue and I smell, the grass outside, and you kind of start to like ground yourself a little bit. And at least, for a moment or some time, you can kind of pull out of wherever that focus is. So I know it's really hard. Somatic is a tough one, and I don't hear of it often, but I have experienced it somewhat. So I'm sorry that you're going through that. But yeah, let me know if you have done any type of ERP, because I'm interested to see what you say there. Hi, Bennett. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you're doing okay. I'm sure that we'll talk soon. But yeah, thanks for tuning in tonight. My first time here in a while, so I'm glad to see you. Oh, right. Okay, so Skeeter Johnson. So race-related OCD. So taboo, can't leave the house, help. So I'm sorry that you're going through that. I'm sorry that you can't, when it makes you feel stuck, that is really, really scary. I know that feeling of feeling like you can't go out because it's just so, so there. And then especially, if you have triggers that you're seeing all the time, it really feels like you need to stay in. Now, when you say race related, I'm assuming you mean like racism, which if anyone doesn't know, so this is actually very common and can fall under what's called moral scrupulosity OCD. So what that is when you feel that, maybe you feel guilty for a lot of different things, and you can fixate on many different things morally. So am I doing this morally wrong? Do I feel this way? Am I racist? Am I not? Did that thought make me racist? So those are all things that can come along with moral scrupulosity. And that's actually kind of mirrored with religious scrupulosity OCD, which that one is, a little bit more specific because it focuses more on religion and that side of things. Whereas moral is, it's anything that's moral that can be morally incorrect. Whether that's homophobia or whatnot, and it's these thoughts that come to you, and it makes you distressed because you feel like maybe you are something that you're not, like the ego dystonic, like I kind of mentioned before. But yeah, I know what you mean about taboo. There's a lot of taboo thoughts out there. My main theme is harm OCD, so very taboo, very scary. Just with just the way that you're thinking about other people, it is a scary thing. Now, what I would say, kind of like I mentioned, and I'll probably say this many, many times here, but I mean, ERP therapy. This is, it saved my life, and that's an understatement, because I was so low, and it was just, it was really, really terrible. But if that's something that you can look into, I think that that's something that will absolutely help you, because what it does is you're confronting these thoughts. So these racist thoughts, from what I understand, that you're having, and instead of you having to figure it out, like, is this true? Is this not? Do I think this? Do I not? That kind of takes that away, so that you can really just like ground and relax yourself, instead of always trying to figure that out. So, I'm really sorry that you're going through this, but I have to say, I've spoken to many people who actually have the same thing, and, you can overcome it. There is a lot of opportunity. So, I would definitely look into ERP if you have not. Okay, so difference, real memories between false memories, false memory OCD. Okay, so false memory OCD. So I'll just give kind of like a little overview of what that is. So false memory OCD is when you look back at certain times or events or instances in your life, and you aren't sure what happened. You can't really be certain about, did this happen, or did that actually happen, or did I do this, and was that, did I do something bad and I didn't know, and it really gets muddied up. Now, I don't quite experience false memory OCD, but I've heard a lot of people who have, and I know quite a bit about it. So the thing with false memory is, so when you look at memories, they're very blurred because it's a memory, right? So, it's, no matter how long ago it was, memories get blurred, and you can't quite put your finger on exactly what happened, but that's where OCD will freak out, because it wants certainty. But, if this memory was years ago or even last week, you can't quite be certain on where that is falling. And so you can't really ever get an answer. And so, it's just more distress. And so really an analogy, like a metaphor, I don't know, either or, that I really like is, so looking back at a memory is like taking a picture of a picture. So every time you go to look at it and you try to figure it out, it gets blurrier. So you take a picture of a picture of a picture of a picture. So it gets blurrier and blurrier and blurrier, and then the distress just goes higher. And the more that you look at it, the more that you try to figure it out, you don't really get that answer that you're looking for. So it's, so when you ask like the difference between real memories and false memories, well, false memory is just when you don't quite know, and you have to become okay with uncertainty. But when it's OCD, there's a reason that it's happening, because OCD is it's a disorder. It's a mental disorder, and there's a misfiring of neurons to get scientific. But, ERP is something that could calm this, so that you're not searching to try and get certain on a memory from the past, because it's almost impossible to do so, unless like there's like a video of it or something, but that's where OCD comes into play, because it wants that. It wants an answer to be what really happened, but you really can't get that answer. So it's, it's just very distressing. Okay. Hi, Sue. Okay. Let's see. So Louisa. So this is a good question. Can antidepressants cause a problem with ERP? So as far as I know, they can. I think any medication can, because it can kind of hinder like the effects, and also it because the ERP, so you expose yourself and you have to trigger yourself and get anxious. Now, sometimes with certain medications for certain people, it really all depends. You might not really have the capability to get anxious, and so it's almost not possible for you to get triggered and raise your anxiety so that you can resist compulsions and drop that anxiety. So that's just something that I've heard. But many people do medication in conjunction with ERP therapy. So it really is a very gray area, but it's a good question to ask. And especially, so what I would say, if you are going to see an ERP specialist, or if you already are, you just always want to let them know what you're on and how it makes you feel and all those different things, because they can give you feedback. And they can also, you can give them permission to speak with your psychiatrist to kind of collaborate on, what is best here for you during this time so that you can actually get better and overcome your OCD. Now, I will say when I started ERP therapy, I was on medication, and that's because I was trying out some things before therapy. Now, they didn't do well for me personally, and so kind of like after a couple weeks in therapy, I did taper off them because they just weren't really helping me. But again, it's different for everyone, because some people on the other spectrum, some people are recommended to take certain medications in therapy because their anxiety is too high. So it's a good question, but yes, it's very a gray area, and it's something that you would just have to work with your specialist on. All right, so another one with false memory. So can OCD give you false memories? Yes. If yes, how do you tell if they're fake? Well, so that question there, that's a hard question. And what OCD wants is certainty. And I don't struggle with false memory myself, so it's hard for me to really be detailed about the way, I guess, to kind of identify that. But I think really a lot of it falls down to the uncertainty of, like, I think this happened. Did this actually happen? I can't figure out if this happened. And I think there's just a lot of signifiers there, but it's something that you would have to work on and identify with an ERP specialist. But the answer is yes, that it can. More so things get construed. So maybe there's a memory that you had, and then you're questioning, well, did this happen or did that actually happen? And then you can't figure it out, and then it's this whole snowball of distress. Okay, Scuba Steve. Do you have any words of wisdom on rituals, magical thinking, having to touch things? So I do not have magical thinking myself. Now, I mean, it's very scary because from what I understand and when I talk to people, there's so many things that you can do. So I do like to give overviews for people, to anyone joining who maybe isn't familiar with magical thinking. So magical thinking, I mean, it can encompass many, many different things. So essentially it could be like, you're at the store and it's like, if I buy this cup versus this cup, well, if I buy this cup, like, my family's going to be in danger. Now, if I buy this cup, my family will be safe. So it's the idea that making a choice will affect something else in a very drastic way. And that can be anything, it's going to hurt this person, or it's going to cause this world event, or it's going to hurt me, or, whatever the case is. Now, when you say having to touch things, I'm curious for you to expand on that. If you mean like you have, like you feel the urge that you have to touch things to feel okay, or something. Is that what you mean? Yeah, you can definitely clarify, and I'll definitely take a look at that. But I mean, magical thinking, it's the same thing really with any type of exposure. It's kind of going against the OCD. So if the OCD is, saying like, well, if you do this, then this is going to happen. Well, an exposure is kind of doing that and just doing it anyways. Even though that there's these intrusive thoughts and these things that are saying that, well, if you do this, this is going to happen. An exposure is to really not listen to that, because that's a compulsion, is to avoid that object or whatever that might think, or walking through that door versus this door, eating this for lunch or eating that for lunch. Anything can have a significant effect on something else. And so really when it comes to resisting compulsions, you would be resisting those choices essentially, because those choices are not dictating everything that you're doing. Okay, let me see. Okay, so ERP and meditation are really good, agree. You don't need drugs to defeat OCD. Just sit down, close your eyes, and let OCD throw everything it has at you and sit with it until the anxiety lessens. So yeah, essentially that is like sitting with your thoughts. So kind of like acknowledge and accept, and then resisting compulsions though is really the biggest thing here, because and it's not as easy. It's easier said than done, of course, because if you don't, a big thing is if you don't know your compulsions. So before therapy, I didn't even know I had compulsions, and that's because mine were all mental. So I just thought, when I thought of OCD, I thought of physical compulsions, because that's just what's in society. That's what people know. And I realized that, rumination is a huge compulsion. Checking my emotions, checking how I'm feeling. These are all big compulsions. And I wouldn't have known that. So I wouldn't have known to try to not do that, essentially. But what you're saying here is yes, it's true. Now, you don't need drugs. Well, it does depend. Some people are recommended to take something to help the anxiety, because sometimes initially the anxiety is too much. So that can be recommended by a therapist. Our OCD specialists at NOCD do not prescribe medication. They might recommend, but they do not prescribe. If you're on something, they also might recommend you to get off of it. So it really depends. But yeah, what you're saying here is an ERP technique it's yeah, exactly. It's like meditation. You're sitting there, these thoughts are coming to you, but you're not attaching to them. That's what OCD does, is it latches onto thoughts, and it's not about the thought being there. It's about your reaction to the thought. So in this case, what you're saying is you're not reacting to the thought. So when you're not reacting, typically the anxiety will lessen. Oh, I jumped all around. So sorry. Cassie, my friend. So Cassie, if anyone doesn't know, she works at NOCD as well, and she is on our peer advisor team. So she's another peer advisor here. So if you were to get signed up in therapy, you may be matched with me. You may be matched with Cassie. She's great. You would love her. Okay, so Cassie, what was the biggest way you remember overcoming your OCD? Well, I would say when I was in therapy, this was the first therapy I ever did. Now, I would say, I worked really hard the first couple weeks, and I started, maybe after maybe 4 or 5 weeks, I noticed change. The thoughts were coming to me less, and when they did, it wasn't as anxiety provoking. Now, that was great. I was like, wow, this is just, this is wonderful. I never thought that I would be able to even overcome this in any sort of way. So I was feeling good. Now, all of a sudden, maybe a couple days, I was feeling really good, maybe for like 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden I spiraled out of control again. Felt like I completely hit the low point. And that was very, discouraging. I felt pretty destroyed, because I knew that I had made progress, and then I went completely backwards. And I remember the appointment that I was with my therapist when I was feeling good the week before. I was like, wow, I'm feeling good, excited, whatever. And then that next week was like tragic. And then I go to see her again, and I was kind of like embarrassed, because I was like, God, I felt like I'd let her down, which I don't know. That's just something that, I don't know. That's just what I felt. And I felt like I let myself down. I felt like I let her down, because I was like, I was doing so good. And now I'm just like in a terrible low place again. So I kind of was in that place of like, this is never going to get better. I tried. Well, it's not working. But, she really encouraged me. She's like, just keep going. Just keep going, keep pushing through. And I did. Even though I felt like I was never going to get out of it, I did. And I kept trying, and then I got to a good place again. So that was like a big thing for me, because I hit such a low point again. And so to be able to kind of pick it back up, that really showed me that, if I hit more low points throughout, or even in a year, I can get back to that same level of being okay because I did, especially when it was the hardest. So thanks for the question, Cassie. Okay, let's see. Okay, Alyssa. Hello. So, how would existential OCD, feel like the world isn't real or I'm not real, yes, work in ERP? So, I feel like my subtype is too abstract. So, agreed with that. I understand that. Now, I have existential OCD, and I just want to be completely honest with you. I was kind of triggered earlier for some reason with this, and it's been kind of a while. And that was always my kind of like those what if questions, like, what if this isn't real? What if we're in a simulation? What if I'm not real? And like it's really scary. Of course, it's like absolutely terrifying. So I'm sorry that you're feeling that way, and I understand the feeling of it's too abstract because it's more intangible, and I definitely understand that. But exposures can be tailored to that, absolutely. It's because it's all about confronting that fear overall. And it might be like saying like, yep, that isn't real. This isn't real. I don't know if that's real. But instead of like running away from the thoughts, but even earlier, I was kind of having some of those thoughts, and I actually did like a little bit of an exposure on that, kind of in my head, of just saying like, yeah, I don't know if that's real. Like, I don't know if it is. It could be, it couldn't be. It's kind of like it's accepting uncertainty, which is not easy. It's scary, but that's something that you do learn in ERP. And I can't, because I'm not a licensed clinician, I can't give exposure guidance per se. But what I want to say is it's completely possible because I did it. I went through it. So for all these things that are abstract or they seem abstract, there's always ways that an exposure can be tailored to that. Absolutely. So, I do wish you the best, but, I would just trust an ERP because it works across any type of thought, whether that's abstract or not. That one really confused me a lot, but they can definitely find something that will help you get through that. So good luck, Alyssa. Okay, Jen. All right, have you ever experienced OCD where instead of specific intrusive thoughts, you experience vague but distressing anxiety first, as if the OC is searching for which intrusive thought it will be? Okay, so let me see here. You experience vague but distressing anxiety first, as if the OC is searching for which intrusive thought it will be. So what this sounds like to me is, it sounds like you might be like obsessing over the anxiety itself, and you're trying to figure out the anxiety, which is another, I know that's something that I used to do all the time. I actually think I was doing it today again. To be honest, I had kind of like a rough day, OCD wise. And honestly, I feel like this was the biggest thing for me. That I felt anxious, and I was like, why am I anxious? And I was searching for a reason or a theme or a specific thought that was like causing that. But in reality, I think it was just the fact that I was trying to figure it out. Which that's something that's called like checking your emotions is like, why am I feeling this way? And like, what can I attribute it to? So I'm like searching all these things in my brain of like, I'm anxious. Why am I anxious? Is it because of this? Is it because of that? And like, I was like searching, but, and I was like trying to find a reason, but sometimes I think that, we're just anxious. And what helps me in that situation is literally telling myself, okay, I'm anxious. I'm just calling it out for what it is. I'm just saying, because that's like that acknowledgement and acceptance of I am anxious, but that's okay. So instead of I'm anxious, why am I anxious? How am I going to figure this out? How can I not be anxious? Well, it's just, you know what? I feel anxious. I feel a little bit distressed. I don't know why, and I don't have to. All I know is that every feeling is temporary. This is temporary. And it's kind of like a pep talk. So I do that often. And even today, I literally had to like give myself a pep talk because I'm telling you this now. But when it was happening to me, I feel like I was in it for a couple hours and I was like, what is going on? And I kept trying to like figure it out. But then I realized, you know what? I'm just anxious and I'm trying to put a reason to it, but I don't really need to because it's actually making it worse. Trying to figure that out, it's better to just leave it. Kyle, I'm anxious. that's it. I'm going to let that ride out. So I hope that helps, but that is something that helps me a lot, to be honest. Okay. I think I have HOCD. So HOCD is really now referred to as sexual orientation OCD, just so you know. That's more of it's like a newer term because it's more all encompassing there's many different sectors now of it. So just, if you're, seeing things, it's really sexual orientation OCD. So I think I have sexual orientation OCD. I'm really scared. Some things I do is I look at pictures to test myself. I started crying. What if I'm gay or bi? I'm scared. So yeah, so that sounds like compulsions for sure. Like kind of like that checking behavior of like, let me look at this to see if this is true, to see if this proves that. So I'm really sorry that this is happening because I know it's very, very scary. Because I think what it comes down to is not trusting yourself and not like completely knowing yourself. Sorry, I think I have like a sneeze. So yeah, very, very scary. And it's very distressing to not know exactly what is happening or how you feel. And then that's where that compulsion comes about is, let me take a look at this as a test to see, is this true or is this not true? And it's almost like you can't figure it out. And, I understand that it's so, so scary. But, what's happening, it sounds like, is continuing to do the compulsion is fueling the OCD, and it actually makes it worse. So that's why compulsions are so bad, because they fuel the OCD. So that's why in ERP, exposure and response prevention, the response prevention is resisting compulsions, because the compulsions make it worse. So, if you can do your best to resist compulsions, but the best way to do it is with exposure therapy. So ERP is just going to be the most effective for that. But yeah, I'm sorry that you're going through this. I know you can get through it though. You really can. You need some good exposures and some good guidance, but you can get through it and you can trust yourself again and not be so worried about this. It's really possible. I thought it was never going to be for me. But it's the uncertainty that is really driving all of the distress there. So, hang in there. Just, try your best to resist those compulsions, because they do make it worse. But at the same time, you have to do what you have to do to make yourself feel better. But, please look into ERP therapy because it can really change everything. Okay. All right. Oh yeah, thank you, Jen. She just said, thank you for being a peer advisor. It's so helpful to have someone to talk to early on in the process. Thank you. It's really nice to get to talk to people beforehand to see how you're feeling. And I know it's always scary for sure in the beginning, but then when I get to, sometimes I'll talk to people, mid-therapy, at the end of therapy, and they're doing well. And it's like, oh my gosh, I remember speaking to you and you were, really, really scared. So yeah, thank you so much. Okay, let's see. So what are signs of sexual orientation OCD? Well, it's just, a lot of rumination. So, and it's that distress. So it's that ego dystonic, which I can say that a lot. If anyone wasn't here that heard it, but ego dystonic is what describes OCD, when you have these thoughts and they don't match up with like your true self, essentially. And so it's distressing because it's like the mind and, to me, the soul are like, they're like combating and it's not matching. So it's so much anxiety there. So it's just the constant questioning of, am I, how do I know? Well, what about this? Well, what about this? Well, let me look at this picture to see. There's just a lot of anxiety associated. So, and I would definitely go on our, so NOCD.com. We have a great, like if you go to, I think it's like education or something, or learn more, and you can pull up like all these different subtypes, and there's great blog posts about it that are written up from a lot of our clinicians. So I would take a look at that because it really breaks everything down. Okay. Okay. Hi, Sue. Okay, so what type of OCD do you have? I have harm OCD since I was 13. I'm sorry. I am 61 now and still deal with it. These past 2 weeks have had a bad spell. I'm so sorry to hear that, Sue. That's a long time to be dealing with this really scary thing. I mean, all OCD is scary, but I know for me, harm was just, to be honest, it was one of the scariest for me in particular. And actually, harm OCD is my main theme. I struggle with harm OCD, um, POCD, existential OCD, some relationship OCD. So, and of course, I feel like there's perfectionism in there as well. So those are my main ones that were the very taboo, harm, POCD, existential. But yeah, I'm so sorry, Sue. Have you ever done any type of OCD specific therapy, and specifically ERP? Have you tried ERP? Okay. So Christina says, sitting in my house alone is such a trigger. It used to be for me as well. I'm not sure exactly why it is for you or what that is related to, but I have self harm OCD as well. So if I was alone, I felt like, what if I hurt myself? Or, so that was very scary. But yeah, definitely. Hi, Danny. Thanks so much for joining. So good to see you. Okay, let's see here. So Jason said, I'm currently in therapy. A lot of it is based on be okay with a hyper awareness and really taking control of my intrusive thought about my breathing. It's tough. It is very, very tough. I'm glad to hear that you're in therapy and it can take time. So, it's, yeah, definitely just, give it time and keep trying. I mean, it took me, I would say, a while to really get a grip on it. But yeah, the hyper awareness thing, I'm so hyper aware in every aspect. But I understand it's like when you're hyper aware on a bodily function and it's just so distressing. It just takes up, it takes up so much time and all your focus. So, I believe that you can get through it, but it'll take a lot of practice. And, I think that you can do it. So I do wish you the best, Jason. Hi, Alex. So Alex is also the best. So Alex is a new peer advisor actually with us at NOCD, and she's awesome. She just moved over to the peer advisor team just a couple days ago, and she's doing great. So, if you do sign up with NOCD, you might get matched with Alex as well. Okay. How do you face some of the mental compulsions, like ruminating? Feel like I'm obsessing about myself all the time. Yeah. So, and I was very confused about that as well in the beginning of therapy, because I was like, well, these are mental. How am I going to stop them or really be able to put effort into, I don't know, making a difference really? But ruminating, huge. Mine was pretty much all rumination. So how do you face that? Well, essentially, so if anyone doesn't know what ruminating is, so for instance, so say I'm scared, I have harm OCD. So say I was very terrified of knives. So a knife was like a huge trigger to me. So let's say that I see a knife and my first thought is, oh my God, what if I stab myself? So that's the thought itself. That's like the fear, like the obsession of what if I stab myself? What if I kill myself? Well, the rumination that follows is, oh my gosh, I don't think I want to do that. Do I want to do that? Did I ever think I want to do that? Well, I saw the knife yesterday. Did I think that same thing? And, I was watching this show last week and someone killed themselves. Did that make me feel some sort of way? So that's like a rumination because that is just, it's mulling over and trying to figure things out. And so it's like all these other thoughts that attach to that main one that was first really distressing. So that's like rumination, and then it's just sticking on it. Like, do I want to? Do I want to? Could I? Will I? Will I ever? Will it get so bad that I do? So it's, and that's rumination essentially. So how to face that? Well, the goal is to stop that. Is to really resist that compulsion, because ruminating is a compulsion. So instead of me going down that spiral, which that's what that is a spiral, I would, instead of me asking all those questions, because those questions are fueling that initial thought, like will I? like, or what if I hurt myself? Well, what if I hurt myself? Now, if I just stick to that thought, the thought is the thought. Instead of going around in these circles of the ruminating, I got to stop that ruminating. I can't think about that show that I watched where someone killed themselves, and I'm trying to compare myself to that person. That's what needs to be stopped. And it's hard. It could be a little bit tricky, but it is possible. I mean, I know I did it, and I never thought I could. So it's really pulling back on those spirals the best that you can. But if you're not in therapy, I mean, that's what really changed everything for me. I know that I couldn't have done that without it. So I hope that you can, I hope that you're in therapy or you're thinking about it. Okay, Nicole, hello. So any tips on relationship OCD? It's so hard to tell what's the OCD talking versus my actual feelings. Yes, so you are really correct. And I've had some relationship OCD. It's not like very prominent for me, but also I haven't, because it could be with anyone. I mean, it could be with your mom, your dad, your friend, your spouse, your partner. I haven't been in like a romantic relationship in a long time, so I am kind of nervous, when that happens, like, will this spring up for me? Because I know it's attached to other parts of my life before. And that's why I know it's so confusing, because there's logical things that happen in relationships, any type of relationship, that can be distressing, or something that you feel like you want to talk about, or something that makes you feel a different way about that said person. But also there's the fine line of OCD where that goes out of control, and it takes it up way out of like the logic area. So this is tough, Nicole. I'm sorry that you're going through it, because it is hard to tell. You're very right. Now, one tip that I like to think about is OCD is typically coming from a place of urgency. So if you feel like you're trying to like solve this puzzle and it's like so urgent, like it's like, I have to know, if they actually said this, or if they meant this by what they said, I have to know right now, or else I'm going to like explode. Probably that's OCD, because OCD comes out of a place of urgency. It needs an answer right away. It needs to know, and it needs to get that answer, or else like, what will happen? Now with other times, I feel like on the opposite spectrum, it's like, well, you might be feeling a certain way, and it's like, okay, I want to talk to that person about it, or I think that means something, but it might not feel as urgent for you. So that's just like one tip there, but you're so right. It's such a gray area, and it's very hard. But also OCD follows such a pattern. So it's also looking at past maybe OCD traits or OCD thoughts that you feel like you may have had before, and maybe trying to kind of compare them and see, like, is this related to that, or is this something new? But yeah, it's tough. So, I wish you the best on sorting through that. But an OCD specialist can help for sure. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So I'm sorry to hear this. What happens if I don't get help for my OCD? I can't get a therapist because I'm too scared to tell my family. I'm really sorry to hear that. That's another layer on what you're already going through. Now, I think what you're doing right now is great. You're trying to get in the community. You're here watching this YouTube live. So those are things and steps that you are taking to help yourself. So I want you to know that you're not alone here. We're all here for you. We really are, because we're a community, and I understand how you're feeling. And I think that it can be scary to tell your family. I guess my question is, like, are you an adolescent? Are you under the age of 18, or and you would need them to kind of sign off on that, or where are you at in that? Because I think that if you could try and tell them, I think I would hope that they would want to get you some help. I know it can be scary for sure. I didn't tell anyone when I was going through it, actually, because I just was like, I was scared. I didn't want them to know what was happening and seem that way. So I'm really sorry, but I understand that feeling. Um, but I mean, it's important to get the help and to prioritize yourself for sure if you can, because you can get through it. But in the meantime, I think it's great that you're participating in anything like this. And then I just want you to know we have free support groups on our app. So if you don't have our app, I would definitely download that. But they're called like community groups. So we have different things on there that cover different topics, and those are really great and those are free. So, I'll definitely take a look at those if you can. Okay, Tyson, how do you know if you are getting over an obsession? Well, to me, how I would know is that it's the thought is coming to me less. So when I was scared about harm and knives and weapons and whatnot, I knew that I was getting over it because I would see a knife and I wouldn't think about it. And I might not even realize till later. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was like, that person had like some really scary knife, and I just didn't even piece it together that was so frightening for me, or that would have been in the past. So I think when you notice yourself getting less triggered by the things that were associated with that obsession, is a pretty good sign. As well as, even if you do get triggered, well, maybe your trigger, say 1 to 10, your anxiety. Maybe your anxiety used to be a 10 when I saw that knife, and now when I see it, it's a 4. So it's still triggering, but not in a intense manner. So that's also a sign that you are overcoming, I could say. Okay. Let's see here. Just going through some. So Izzy, any advice on treatment for Tourettic OCD? So I know that we at NOCD, we just started working more with these type of disorders. So I would actually give us a call. So you can go to our website at treatmyocd.com, and then you can schedule a free call. So that's just a call to learn about it, learn about the therapy we have. If we do have a therapist who can help you with this specific disorder. But I do know that we are venturing into these different disorders. So, I think this is a great question, and it is very associated. So I would definitely give us a call, because you can learn more about what we can offer in regards to that. It is newer that we do have these other services along with OCD, but they are in conjunction. So I believe that this would fit right in there. So I would definitely give us a call. Okay. Oh, but I do want to say, oftentimes there is still ERP associated. So that's the thing, because with OCD, ERP is the main form of treatment, the most effective. And there's also there's other forms of treatment alongside ERP that can help with this. And those are things that we will be offering here as well. So I'll definitely give us a call to learn more about that. Okay. This is a great question from Bennett. Okay, so is it common for caffeine to exacerbate OCD symptoms? I've definitely noticed a connection. Yes, 100%. So this was like, I think it's been over a year now that I stopped drinking coffee because it was so bad. I would literally take a sip of coffee and be like feeling like I was gonna like lose my mind, and I just like the anxiety skyrockets, and then as soon as the anxiety skyrockets, the OCD skyrockets, and it's just like that perfect like in conjunction with it. So absolutely, and I've heard that from a lot of people as well. So yes, I actually cut it out pretty much completely. I do drink green tea here and there, but it has, like a third of the caffeine as a cup of coffee. And if I'm just like really, really tired, I will do some green tea, but I gotta be careful, because even sometimes I literally will drink some green tea and I'm like I get wired, it scares me, it sends me into like a slight panic. So I think it's great that you're looking at those things, because all these environmental factors can definitely have an effect. So absolutely. Right. So Elena, can I ever get off SSRIs for OCD and clinical depression that I've had bouts of since I was 23. I've tried it a couple of times and major relapses kicked in right away. I've also had crippling relapses while on highest doses, and the doctor had to add another meds, which took months to actually help me start doing the basics like getting out of bed. CBT has never really worked for me. I'm so sorry to hear that. Now, so this is a hard question. There's no certainty there, but I would say that if you haven't tried ERP, definitely give it a try, because it is a form of CBT, but it is much more effective than just CBT. ERP, exposure and response prevention, is the most effective form of therapy for OCD. That's what we offer here at NOCD. And it can be in conjunction with medication, but it doesn't have to be. It really just depends on what that effect is for you. So there could be recommendations from your OCD specialist in that first session to say, you know what, I think that you should, get off of the SSRIs before starting, or you can kind of do it while. But I think it's possible. I really, really do, because ERP is the most effective. So if the SSRIs are what's mostly helping for your OCD, what I would hope is that if you were to do ERP, that the ERP could really bring down your anxiety, and then maybe you wouldn't need the SSRIs. So it's very, that's a gray area for sure, but I think it is possible. So, I do wish you the best with that. I know that's really hard. Okay, let's see here. I'm just looking for some more questions here. I just skipped all over. I am sorry. Okay, let's see. Okay. All right, Raja. So, does OCD give you tics? I do not have Tourette's, and yet I have many tics. Can it be caused by my OCD? So I do know that those can be related. Absolutely. Now, I don't know if it's like the OCD giving that to you, or kind of what that relationship is. I'm sure it can be different for people, but I do know that it can definitely be related. Absolutely. Okay, Sue said, wow, didn't think about the rumination being a symptom of OCD. It would, because it would cause it to be worse. It does mine. Absolutely. Me too. I mean, the second I start ruminating, I am down a spiral and I feel just awful. So, okay. So Izzy, any advice with trying to get help when you are under 18 and your parents think trying to get a diagnosis for OCD would be over medicalizing? That's a hard question. Any advice with trying to get help when you are under 18 and your parents think trying to get diagnosed with OCD would be? That is really, really hard. I'm sorry that it just sounds like your parents aren't quite wanting to get that help for you. But something that might help, Izzy, is education. Because oftentimes I feel like people, especially, maybe parents, they aren't so supportive because maybe they just don't quite understand. And so maybe if you would be able to give them some resources to kind of read over and to get more familiar with, of like, this is what's happening, and it's terrifying, and to try and get them to understand better, because people don't often understand OCD. So yeah, I'm sorry that that you are experiencing that for sure, but you can give us a call as well. We can't book you an appointment without parental consent, but you could give us a call. We could talk some things through with you. You could book that on the website, and then we could even talk to your parents if they would be willing. We could talk to them and just try and see what's possible there. Okay, you just mentioned, this was from a bit ago, but you went backwards after making some progress. Why do you think you went backwards? Honestly, I have no idea, because I was feeling really good. So I kind of mentioned that when I was going through therapy, I was feeling good for a couple weeks, and then I felt like I just completely hit back to square one. And I honestly, I don't know. I don't know if maybe just a different new thought hit me. I'm not quite sure, but whatever it was sent me into a spiral, and I felt like I couldn't get back out of it. But I do know this happens oftentimes. It's kind of like a relapse, essentially, like in therapy. Because what I'll say is that OCD recovery is not linear. So it's not as like, okay, one day I feel a little bit better, the next day I'm a little bit better than that, then I'm better, then I'm better. It's going to be back and forth because you're trying to break a pattern that you've been in for a while. The brain, you get used to this way of thinking, and it's like we're trying to change that way of thinking to this other way. But it makes sense that sometimes you're going to fall back in the old, sometimes you're going to fall back into the new because you're learning. And so I think that it just makes a lot of sense that you're going to fall back sometimes, but sometimes you might fall far back. And that's just kind of what happened to me. But I mean, this was just in a couple months of working through ERP, so I was still very fresh. And yeah, I don't exactly know why, but it happened, and it was hard. But I needed the encouragement just to keep going and to know that, I felt good for some time there. So I can get that again, and I did. So, I don't know, just, got to keep going for sure. Yes, Cassie, we do. So yes, so we do offer treatment now for related disorders, tics, supporting, absolutely. So give us a call for sure. Okay, let's see. Yes, Cassie's also body-focused repetitive behaviors, skin picking, hair pulling. Those are all things that we are offering here, help with here at NOCD, along with OCD as well. So. Okay, Adam. So is there hope of recovery? Yes, absolutely. That is honestly the only reason I'm here, because I never thought that I was going to get better. And, here I am talking to all of you guys, which is pretty wild. I still think about sometimes, and I'm like, if someone told me, even when I had my first appointment that, oh, you know what, Kyle, like in a year, you're going to be an OCD advocate, a peer advisor, you're going to be on a YouTube live talking to all these people about OCD and how you're feeling better, I would have been like, yeah, right. Like totally. I mean, never. So yes, there is a lot of hope, absolutely, for recovery. Thank you so much. Good night. Sleep well. Christina. So you don't know who your peer advisor is. How do I figure that out? I would just call on our main number if you can. Now, if you ever got a text from NOCD, we have a peer advisor text line, as well as a care team, more of like a customer service text line that can kind of help with like billing, more of those logistical things. Well, send a text to either one if you feel like you did get a text, and just say, hi, I'm looking to find out who my peer advisor is. Whoever's on the other side can definitely help you. But if you don't have a text, just definitely go ahead and give us a call with a number on the website, and then we can link you up with them, send you their, we have like calendar invites essentially where you can see where we have availability to schedule a call. Yes. Okay, so ego dystonic. So ego dystonic is so EGO. I know it's probably hard to hear through all this, but EGO. And then hyphen, maybe it might be one word, I'm not really sure. So ego, and then dystonic is dystonic. So ego dystonic. Yes. Okay, so we just have about a minute here. I know there's still a lot of questions. And I wish I could get through everything, but unfortunately, just me today. Mario, hello, Mario. So I used to see Mario all the time when I did YouTube lives for a while. It's kind of been a while because I've just been kind of busy just, with work and other things. I moved, and how are you, Mario? I hope that you're doing well. I will try not to disappear. I'll try to be here more often, but no, it's so good to hear from you, Mario. It really is. I actually was thinking of you when I came on to do this again tonight. I was I wonder if Mario's going to be there. So I'll try to do this more often for sure, but it's so good to see you. Okay. Well, I just want to say, I know that there's still some questions. Here's one more. Okay, yeah, you're welcome, Rebecca. So yes, so ego dystonic. Yes, exactly. So that's OCD is ego dystonic, and then I believe the other side of it, when it's not, when it's something that you actually want, is like ego systonic. I believe it is ego systonic. But yes, ego dystonic. Thank you. So I want to leave off with this question because this is a good one. And to hopefully encourage anyone here who is scared to do ERP. So how do you find courage to do ERP? I guess scared. Absolutely. To be honest, I was terrified. First off, I was terrified to share my thoughts because they were disturbing. Harm OCD, POCD, existential OCD. I thought that I was going to be like locked away. Like, not kidding. I was like, they're definitely sending me to an institution. But I was at the point of like, well, that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. And then you get into therapy, and then now, okay, you took that step, which is, huge step, lots of courage there, even just to have that first appointment, which, just so everyone knows, the first appointment, you're not jumping right into exposures. It is, you are going to do an assessment. So yes, you're gonna talk about some thoughts and open up a bit, but you're not going to jump right into like, okay, let me confront all these thoughts. It's an assessment so that your therapist can really understand where you are at in the process of your symptoms, of how severe, and is this OCD, and are there accompanying things, like is there general anxiety disorder, is there depression, because it's actually one of the best screeners that we have, clinical screeners for these different disorders, so that you can really gauge what is going on. So that's session 1. Now, exposures usually start session 2, session 3. And I know it's really terrifying. I was like horrified to begin because of my taboo themes. I was like, I don't want to like think about that and just like be okay with it and just have to sit with it. But what I want to say is, and this is what really makes sense to me, is ERP. So without ERP, how are you feeling with these thoughts? Terrible, lonely, scared, distressed, panicky. That's already all happening. Now, yes, ERP, so when you think about it, ERP, scary. There's some anxiety, there's some distress, there's some panic, but with the hope of getting better. So now you're doing it for a reason. You're not just sitting by yourself with all these thoughts in your head, not knowing what to do, not knowing if you could ever get better, feeling so lost. Now you are having some of those feelings, but you're doing it in a controlled environment with a specialist who is guiding you and encouraging you along the way. So that's the big difference there. And I know it's hard to see, but that is true, because it's like either way, you are struggling, you're suffering, you're alone, you don't have guidance, and these thoughts are terrible. But, for me, just to go into that first appointment and share these thoughts that I've never told a soul in my life, and have the therapist just be like, okay, yes, let's get started. Here's your next appointment. I was like, really? Are you sure? Like it was so wild. And that in itself gave me relief, knowing that I had someone who understood. And then after that, yes, we started on exposures. It was scary. I can't say I loved it, but what I loved is coming out of an exposure feeling better and less anxious. So just this last question, really funny, warrior. But yeah, so I think this is a great question, but there's a lot of hope, everyone. So I just want to say, if you're not in ERP and you're thinking about it, give it a try. That's all that you can do, is try and give it your best. We're all in this together. So, yeah, thank you so much for joining. I just want to say, NOCD is a really, really great place to get started with ERP therapy. Whether you're ready or not, you can always give us a call, kind of feel things out. That doesn't mean you have to commit, but it's a start to take that step. And also knowing that you're going to get matched with an ERP specialist as well as a peer advisor like me. So someone that you can talk to in the beginning. We're going to have an appointment on the phone. We're going to talk things through. We're going to talk after your first appointment to make sure that you feel comfortable, you feel good, and that you're ready to move forward. So I just want to say, we're all in this together. I know it can feel lonely, but we have each other. So thank you everyone for joining in tonight, and I hope to see you all soon. Thank you. Good night.